Emily had always been a strong woman, even though her body, fragile due to a chronic illness, tried to prove otherwise. That night, as she looked at herself in the mirror, her eyes reflected a determination that contrasted with the paleness of her skin. It was her dear friend's birthday, and despite the constant pain, she decided to go. She needed a distraction, an escape from the four white walls of her apartment. In the party hall, the loud music and laughter echoed, creating a vibrant and welcoming atmosphere. Emily struggled to feel at ease, but her mind was restless, every heartbeat reminding her of the constant battle she fought with her body. That's when he appeared. Richard had an easy smile and eyes that sparkled with the promise of adventure. He approached with confidence, offering her a glass of wine. "You seem like someone who needs a fun night," he said, with a smile that could melt even the coldest heart. Emily felt a mix of caution and curiosity. Her instinct told her to be careful, but there was something about Richard's presence that made her want to let go, to forget for a moment the limitations that the illness imposed on her. As the conversation flowed, she discovered that Richard had a carefree, almost frivolous nature. He talked about travels, parties, and his countless adventures as if they were the essence of life. Emily, on the other hand, only shared bits of her reality, trying to hide the weight she carried daily. However, the sincerity in her eyes did not go unnoticed by Richard. That night something changed. Emily, who had always built high walls around her heart, felt a crack. Richard made her laugh, something she hadn't done in a long time. He made her feel seen, not as the sick woman, but as someone worthy of affection and attention. As the party went on, Emily felt a connection growing, despite her reservations. When the night came to an end, Richard walked her to the door. "I'd like to see you again," he said, gently holding her hand. Emily hesitated, feeling a mix of fear and hope. I have my complications," she replied, trying to pave the way for possible rejection. "We all do," he answered with an understanding smile. As she closed the door behind her, Emily collapsed on the couch, feeling the tiredness and emotion of the night. For the first time in a long time, her heart beat with a new hope. Richard was different, and even though his frivolous nature worried her, there was something about him that made her want to take a chance. She knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time she was willing to try. Emily didn't know what the future held, but that night, as she lay down, she felt alive. And that, to her, was the beginning of a new story. The days following the encounter with Richard were a whirlwind of emotions for Emily. She found herself mentally revisiting every moment of that night, feeling a mix of anxiety and excitement. There was a flicker of hope within her, a light that hadn't shone in a long time. And when Richard invited her to dinner, her heart nearly leaped out of her chest. The dinner was simple but meaningful. They talked about their lives, fears, and dreams. Richard spoke passionately about his travels and future plans, while Emily shared her hopes for a quieter, healthier life. Every word exchanged seemed to strengthen the bond between them, and gradually, Emily began to open up more, trusting Richard in a way she had never trusted anyone before. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Emily's health continued to be a constant shadow in her life. There were days when the pain was unbearable, and Richard, despite his cheerful nature, began to show signs of frustration. He wanted to help her, but the helplessness in the face of Emily's illness was a burden hard to bear. One night, after a stroll in the park, Emily had a crisis. The pain hit her intensely, and Richard, desperate, took her to the hospital. As she lay on the gurney, holding his hand, tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry, Richard," she said, her voice choked up. "I know this is hard. Maybe you deserve someone who can give you more." Richard squeezed her hand firmly. "Don't talk like that, Emily. I'm here because I want to be. I don't care about the difficulties." But there was a note of uncertainty in his voice that Emily couldn't ignore. The following months were a roller coaster. There were moments of pure happiness, like weekend outings and cozy nights by the fireplace, where they laughed and made plans. But there were also moments of despair, when Emily's health worsened and Richard felt lost, not knowing how to help. One evening, during a dinner at home, Richard brought up a conversation Emily dreaded. "Emily, I love you, but sometimes I feel like we're stuck in a cycle of pain and frustration. I don't want to see you suffer, but I also don't know if I'm strong enough to continuously face this." Emily felt a lump in her throat. His words pierced her heart, revealing a fear she had been trying to suppress. "I understand, Richard. Maybe you need someone who can keep up with your pace of life. I don't want to be a burden to you." But even amidst these words of pain, there was tenderness in Richard's eyes. He embraced her, holding her as if afraid to let go. "I don't want to lose you, Emily. I just don't know how we can overcome all of this." That was a turning point for both of them. They decided to fight together, but they knew the road would be tough. Every moment of happiness was celebrated more intensely, and every difficulty was faced with renewed courage. Their relationship deepened, marked by a blend of love and suffering, where each day was a battle, but also a victory. The connection between Emily and Richard ran deep, but the clouds of uncertainty still hung over them. And as they continued their journey, they knew they would need more than love to overcome the challenges the future held. As months passed by, despite moments of joy, the difficulties began to pile up. Emily's health continued to decline, and visits to the hospital became more frequent. Richard, who once seemed to be her rock, started showing signs of fatigue and frustration. He tried to be there for her, but the constant pressure was taking its toll. One afternoon, while Emily lay exhausted on the couch after another bout of pain, Richard entered the room with a tense expression. "Emily, we need to talk," he said, his voice heavy with a weight she had never heard before. Her heart raced, anticipating the worst. "I feel like we're stuck in an endless cycle," he continued, sitting beside her. "I love you, but I don't know how much longer I can handle this. My life has revolved around your comings and goings to the hospital, and I'm feeling suffocated." Emily felt a sharp pang in her chest, as if each word of his was a sharp blade. "I don't want to be a burden to you, Richard," she replied, tears streaming down her face. "But this is my reality. I didn't choose to be sick." "I know," he said, his voice trembling, "but I didn't choose this either. I want to have a life, I want to travel, I want to do things without worrying if you'll need to go to the hospital at any moment." The conversation was interrupted by a painful silence. Both knew they were at an impasse. Emily felt their love slipping through her fingers like sand being carried by the wind. She knew Richard deserved a full life, but the thought of losing him was unbearable. A few weeks later, while Emily was hospitalized again, Richard began to distance himself. He didn't visit her as often, and when he did, he seemed distracted, as if his mind was elsewhere. Emily tried not to show it, but every absent or distracted visit from Richard felt like a blow to her already fragile heart. One day, while alone in the hospital room, Emily received a message from a close friend. "Emily, we need to talk. It's about Richard," the message read. With a tightness in her chest, Emily asked her friend to come to the hospital. When her friend arrived, the expression on her face confirmed Emily's worst fears. "I saw him with another woman, Emily," her friend said, gripping her hand tightly. "They were together at a restaurant, and they seemed very intimate." Emily felt the world crumbling around her. Each breath was a struggle against the overwhelming pain in her chest. Richard's betrayal was a cruel blow, something she had never imagined facing. Between tears and sobs, she made a difficult decision. She needed to know the truth, and she hired a private investigator to follow Richard. The following days were pure agony. Emily waited amidst pain and despair for answers she knew could utterly destroy her. When the detective finally delivered the report, the evidence was clear. Richard was in a relationship with another woman. The news hit Emily like a hurricane. She felt betrayed, abandoned, and her heart seemed to shatter with every reading of the report. But amidst the pain, something inside her began to transform. A strength she didn't know she possessed started to emerge. Determined not to be defeated, Emily began to plan her next move. The pain in Emily's chest was as intense as the physical. Hospitalized, she stared at the white ceiling, trying to process Richard's betrayal. Hours passed slowly, each minute bringing a new wave of sadness and anger. However, along with the pain, a silent determination began to grow within her. Emily knew she needed to confront Richard, but first, she needed to regain her strength. In that hospital where she had often felt vulnerable, Emily found a new focus. She spent hours talking to the detective, gathering every detail she could use against Richard. The nurses noticed the change. She was no longer just the fragile patient, but a woman determined to fight for her dignity. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. Emily was discharged from the hospital and returned home, where Richard awaited, apparently oblivious to what she knew. When he entered the room, the silence between them was heavy, laden with unspoken tensions. "Richard, we need to talk," she said, with a firm voice that surprised them both. He looked at her, confused but nodded, sitting on the couch. "I know about the other woman," Emily said, without mincing words, watching as Richard's expression changed from confusion to shock. "I hired a detective. I have evidence of everything." Richard tried to interrupt, but Emily raised her hand. "No, Richard. Now you're going to listen to me. You betrayed me while I was fighting for my life. And yet you have the audacity to demand compensation from me." He tried to justify, but every word of his sounded empty and false. Emily felt a new power taking hold of her. "I'm not the victim you thought you could manipulate," she said, her eyes gleaming with controlled fury. "You knew I inherited properties from my father, but you thought I would never use that against you." Richard fell silent, unable to argue. Emily, with a cold calmness, showed him the evidence. Photos, documents, everything she had gathered. "I will use this in court," she stated, "and you won't get a penny from me." Richard's expression changed from defense to desperation. "Emily, please. I made a mistake. I love you." But his words had no power over her anymore. "Love isn't something you say, it's something you demonstrate," she replied, steadfast. "And you failed miserably at that." Richard's new fiancée, upon discovering the extent of the situation, also left him. He was left alone, indebted, and without the emotional support he expected. Threats from acquaintances of Emily, who felt betrayed by his actions, began to appear, adding another layer of despair to his life. Emily, on the other hand, felt liberated. She blocked all attempts at contact from Richard and focused on her own recovery. The pain was still there, but now it was accompanied by a sense of liberation. She began to plan her travels, explore new hobbies, and reconnect with old friends. With each passing day, Emily felt stronger, more independent. Looking towards the future, she saw endless possibilities. Richard's betrayal, which had initially devastated her, became the catalyst for her transformation. She was ready to live her life fully, without the shadows of the past. Emily felt like a warrior preparing for battle. Every morning as she looked at herself in the mirror, she repeated to herself that she was strong, that she could overcome any challenge. However, the pain of Richard's betrayal was still an open wound, pulsating with every beat of her heart. She knew the fight for justice would be arduous, but she was determined to win. The preparations for the lawsuit drained her strength. Every meeting with her lawyer, every detail revisited from the documents proving Richard's betrayal, reopened wounds she tried to heal. At night, alone in her bed, Emily cried silently, feeling the weight of loneliness and abandonment. The coldness of the pillow beside her constantly reminded her that the man she loved had betrayed her so cruelly. One day, while reviewing the legal papers, Emily found an old photo of her and Richard, taken in the early months of their marriage. They were smiling, embracing, radiating happiness. She held the photo with trembling hands, tears falling onto the image. "Why did you do this, Richard?" she whispered into the void. It felt as if her soul was being torn apart, the pain of betrayed love penetrating deep. The courtroom hearing was excruciating. Richard, sitting on the other side, avoided her gaze. He seemed like a shadow of the man Emily had known, but that didn't diminish the anger and sadness she felt. Her lawyer presented the meticulously collected evidence, while Emily tried to maintain composure. Every detail of the betrayal, every lie exposed, felt like a direct blow to her already wounded heart. During the recess, Emily sought refuge in a secluded corner of the courtroom. She trembled, the pain and fear almost unbearable. "Why am I going through this? What did I do to deserve so much pain?" she thought, struggling to regain composure. A close friend, who accompanied her, found her and embraced her. "You're stronger than you think, Emily. Don't let him see how much you're suffering." The legal battle dragged on for weeks, each hearing a new emotional torture. Emily dreamed of a future free from Richard, but each step in the process seemed like a cruel reminder of his betrayal. However, she persisted. There were days when she wanted to give up, to run away from it all, but the reminder of her dignity and self-love made her keep going. Finally, the verdict was delivered. Richard not only lost the case but was also ordered to pay compensation to Emily. Justice was served, but the victory had a bittersweet taste. Emily left the courtroom, exhausted and emotionally drained. The pain of betrayal was still there, but a new feeling was beginning to emerge: hope. With Richard out of her life, Emily began to focus on herself. She allowed herself to feel all the pain, no longer trying to hide it. Every tear shed was a step towards healing. She began to explore new passions, like photography and writing, finding comfort in creative expression. Traveling, as she had always dreamed, became a reality. With every new landscape, every new face she encountered, Emily felt reborn. The pain was still a constant companion, but now it was a pain she knew she could overcome. Richard's betrayal had left deep scars, but it had also transformed her into a stronger and more resilient woman. Emily was ready to rewrite her own story, one where she was the heroine, free and in control of her destiny. The first days after the verdict were a mix of relief and emptiness for Emily. She was free from Richard, but freedom came with a high emotional cost. Every corner of the house seemed imbued with painful memories, reminders of once happy moments now tainted by betrayal. Sometimes she found herself sitting on the living room floor, holding her knees and crying until tears dried up. But life didn't wait. Emily decided she couldn't continue living in the shadow of the past. Determined to heal, she began to explore new passions. Photography, something that had always intrigued her, became an escape. She bought a new camera and started capturing the beauty of the world around her. Every click was a small victory, a step towards recovery. During one of her photo walks, Emily met Sarah, a local artist with a vibrant and welcoming spirit. Sarah had an infectious energy, and upon seeing Emily's photos, she encouraged her to participate in a community art exhibition. "You have an incredible eye for beauty," Sarah said. "Your photos need to be seen." Despite initial insecurity, Emily agreed. The exhibition was a success, and she felt a wave of pride and satisfaction she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time, she saw a future where her identity wasn't tied to pain and betrayal, but to her talent and ability to reinvent herself. However, the path to healing wasn't linear. There were days when Richard's shadow still loomed over her. On one of those dark days, Emily received a letter from her lawyer informing her that Richard was attempting to appeal the verdict. She felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. The idea of facing Richard again terrified her, bringing forth all the feelings of pain and betrayal. Emily spent the night awake, her mind flooded with fear and uncertainty. The next day, she decided to visit her father's grave, seeking comfort and guidance. Sitting beside the tombstone, she cried, letting all her despair pour out. "Father, what do I do? How do I keep fighting?" In that moment of vulnerability, Emily felt an unexpected calmness. She remembered her father's words, always encouraging her to be strong and never give up, no matter how difficult the path. "You are stronger than you think," he used to say. With renewed determination, Emily faced Richard's appeal with the same strength that had brought her there. Surrounded by friends and supporters, she refused to succumb to despair. The process was exhausting, but every obstacle overcome made her feel more resilient. In the end, the appeal was denied, and Emily felt a new wave of freedom and power. She was no longer the betrayed and abandoned woman, but someone who had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. The support of Sarah and the new friends she had made along the way was crucial. They not only gave her strength but also helped her see that there was life and love after betrayal. Emily began to travel, something she had always dreamed of. Each new destination was a discovery, an opportunity to connect with the world and herself. In Paris, she fell in love with art. In Tokyo, with the vibrant culture. And in the beaches of Hawaii, with the serenity of the sea. During her travels, Emily found a new love. Someone who saw her for who she truly was and valued her in her entirety. But above all, she learned to love herself again. The pain of Richard still existed, but it no longer defined her. She was Emily, a strong, talented, and resilient woman, ready to embrace life with her whole heart. Emily felt the warm breeze of Hawaii caressing her face as she walked along the beach at dawn. Each step in the sand was a reminder of her new life, of her rebirth. The beauty of the ocean around her, with its gentle waves and endless horizon, reflected the peace she was beginning to feel within herself. But even in that paradise, Richard's shadow sometimes crept into her thoughts, bringing with it painful memories. During her travels, Emily had met Daniel, a writer who was also seeking inspiration and healing. They had met in a small bookstore in Paris, both fascinated by the same poetry books. Since then, their lives had intertwined in an unexpected and beautiful way. Daniel had a calm and patient demeanor, always willing to listen and share his own stories of pain and overcoming. One night, sitting by the seashore, Daniel asked Emily about her scars. "I see strength in your eyes, Emily, but I also see pain. Do you want to talk about it?" Emily hesitated, looking out at the sea, trying to find the right words. "Richard broke me in so many ways," she began, her voice trembling. "I loved him deeply, but he betrayed me and tried to destroy me. I spent so much time feeling inadequate, thinking the fault was mine." Daniel held her hand, firm but gently. "You don't have to carry this pain alone," he said. "And you are not inadequate. You never were." Daniel's words were a balm for Emily's wounds. For the first time, she allowed herself to talk about everything: the betrayal, the legal process, the lonely nights, and the days of despair. As she spoke, she felt as if a weight were being lifted off her shoulders. Daniel listened attentively, without judgment, just being there for her. The following days were filled with new discoveries and moments of joy. Emily and Daniel explored the beaches, danced under the stars, and laughed as if they were children again. The connection between them deepened, and Emily felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. However, Emily's emotional journey still had its ups and downs. One night, after a particularly happy day, she had a nightmare. She dreamt of Richard, of the betrayal, and woke up crying, her chest tight with pain. Daniel found her like that, sitting on the bed, trembling and gasping for air. "Emily, I'm here," he said, embracing her. "You're safe now." She held on to him, seeking comfort. "Sometimes it feels like the pain will never go away," she confessed, her voice choked with tears. "I'm afraid of getting hurt again." Daniel held her face in his hands, looking deep into her eyes. "The pain is part of our past, but it doesn't have to define our future. You're an amazing woman, Emily. You deserve to be happy and loved." Those words were a new awakening for Emily. She realized that healing wasn't a straight line but a journey full of twists and turns. And it was okay to feel pain from time to time, as long as she didn't let that pain control her life. With Daniel's support, Emily began to accept her scars as part of who she was. They told a story of resilience, of a woman who had been hurt but had found the strength to rise again. She continued her travels, exploring new places and cultures, each experience adding a layer of richness to her life. Daniel accompanied her, and together they created new memories, full of love and understanding. Emily learned to trust again, to open her heart without fear. And in doing so, she found a peace and happiness she never thought possible. On a sunny afternoon in Tuscany, as they looked out at the fields of sunflowers, Daniel knelt before Emily, holding a small box. "Emily, you've brought light and color into my life. Will you share the rest of this journey with me?" Emily's tears were of pure joy. "Yes, Daniel. I want to share everything with you." In that moment, Emily knew she had found her home, not in a specific place, but in the arms of someone who loved and accepted her completely. And for the first time in a long time, she looked to the future with a heart full of hope and happiness. The first few months after the engagement were a dream come true for Emily and Daniel. They traveled the world, exploring new places and creating memories together. Life seemed to finally be in balance, and Emily felt happier and more secure than ever. One morning, while having coffee at a charming cafe in Rome, Daniel brought up a topic that would change the course of their lives. "Emily," he said, holding her hand, "I've been offered a job for a writing project in New York. It's an incredible opportunity, but it means we'll have to move there for a year." Emily was surprised but excited about the possibility of a new adventure. "New York? That sounds wonderful, Daniel. Let's do it together." The move to New York was exciting and challenging. They found a cozy apartment in the heart of the city, and life in the bustling metropolis brought a new rhythm and energy to their lives. Daniel immersed himself in his writing project, while Emily explored the streets, capturing the vibrant essence of the city through her photographs. But as life often does, an unexpected turn was about to happen. One day, While at the art gallery where her photographs were on display, Emily felt a sharp pain in her chest. She collapsed to the floor, her vision blurred and her breathing labored. The last thing she heard was the sound of sirens approaching. When she woke up in the hospital, she saw Daniel by her side, his eyes filled with concern. "Emily, you had a heart attack," he said, his voice trembling. The doctors said it was caused by a combination of stress and an underlying health condition. The news hit her like a ton of bricks. Emily felt broken, her fragility exposed in a cruel and relentless way. She had thought she was finally free from the shadows of the past, but now she was back in a hospital fighting for her life. The days in the hospital were bleak. Emily struggled with fear and a sense of helplessness. Daniel was always by her side, but seeing him suffer for her was unbearable. "Daniel, maybe you should go back to the project," she suggested weakly. "I don't want to be a burden to you." Daniel held her hand tightly. "Emily, I love you. We're in this together. I'm not going anywhere." Even with Daniel's support, Emily couldn't shake off the despair she felt. The heart attack was a cruel reminder of her vulnerability, that her body could still betray her. She spent hours staring at the hospital's white ceiling, feeling trapped and powerless. One night, while alone, Emily received an unexpected visit. It was her old friend Sarah, the artist she had met at the beginning of her healing journey. Sarah brought with her a positive and welcoming energy, and seeing Emily so down, she sat by her side and held her hand. "Emily, I know this seems unbearable right now, but you are the strongest person I know," Sarah said, her eyes filled with compassion. "You've overcome so much. Don't let this defeat you." Sarah's words ignited a flame of determination in Emily. She began to participate in physical therapy sessions more vigorously, focusing on every small progress. With the support of Daniel and Sarah, she started to regain her strength, both physically and emotionally. When she finally got discharged, Emily and Daniel knew that their lives needed a change. They decided to go back to a quieter life, away from the stress of the big city. They bought a small house in a coastal village, where the pace was slower and nature provided the peace they needed. There, surrounded by Daniel's love and the beauty of the ocean, Emily found a new purpose. She started teaching photography classes, helping others see the world in a more beautiful and meaningful way. Daniel finished his writing project, inspired by Emily's resilience and courage. Despite the adversities, Emily learned that life is made of ups and downs, and that every twist and turn, no matter how painful, can lead to new beginnings. She and Daniel together weathered the storm and found serenity on the other side. And with each new day, Emily continued to rediscover the strength and beauty that had always existed within her. The life in the coastal village was tranquil, almost idyllic. Emily and Daniel found a harmonious rhythm, relishing in the simple pleasures of everyday life. Mornings were filled with walks on the beach, and afternoons with Emily teaching photography to a group of local enthusiasts. Daniel wrote, inspired by the serenity around him. It was a new era of peace and contentment for both. However, calm often precedes the storm. Emily was in the midst of one of her classes, showing her students how to capture the sunset's light, when her phone rang. It was a call from the hospital. Her mother, who had always been a constant and loving presence in her life, had been in a serious car accident and was in critical condition. The ground seemed to disappear beneath her feet. Emily's world, which had finally seemed stable, was turned upside down in an instant. She and Daniel rushed to the hospital, fear pulsing through their veins. Upon arrival, the sight of her mother unconscious, surrounded by machines and tubes, shattered her. The days that followed were a blur of pain and worry. Emily split her time between the house and the hospital, trying to maintain a facade of strength for her mother, who would occasionally wake up confused and frail. Daniel's presence was a comfort, but the constant worry ate away at her peace of mind. One afternoon, sitting by her mother's bedside, holding her hand, Emily felt a wave of hopelessness. "Mom, I need you to come back to me," she whispered, tears silently streaming down her face. Seeing her mother so vulnerable made her feel powerless, once again at the mercy of life's cruel twists and turns. Meanwhile, Emily's health began to decline again. Stress and constant worry started to take a toll, bringing back symptoms of her chronic illness. Daniel insisted she rest, but Emily couldn't tear herself away from her mother's side. One night, Exhausted and emotionally drained, Emily collapsed at the hospital. She woke up in a bed next to her mother's, with Daniel by her side, holding her hand with an expression of concern and pain. "Emily, you need to take care of yourself too," he said, his voice filled with love and desperation. "I can't lose you too." Emily felt torn apart. She wanted to be present for her mother, but knew she needed to be strong for herself and for Daniel. The internal battle between her responsibilities and her own health needs consumed her. The doctors intervened, insisting Emily needed absolute rest. It was a tough blow for her to accept, but Daniel convinced her to allow friends and family to help more. "We're a team, Emily. Don't carry it all alone." Emily began to delegate responsibilities, allowing other people to care for her mother while she recovered. It was a period of deep reflection, where she learned to balance her needs with those of others. The pain of seeing her mother so fragile never faded, but she found strength in the community around her and in Daniel's unwavering love. Finally, after weeks of uncertainty, Emily's mother began to show signs of improvement. Seeing her mother's eyes open clearly for the first time was a moment of pure relief. Emily, holding her hand, cried tears of joy and gratitude, but the journey was far from over. Her mother's recovery would be long, and Emily knew she would need to continue to be strong, both for her mother and for herself. With Daniel by her side, she felt she could face anything. Each twist, each moment of pain and overcoming, reinforced in Emily the resilience she didn't even know she possessed. And despite the curveballs life continued to throw her way, she rose each time, more determined and stronger, ready to face whatever came next. The first steps of her mother's recovery were painfully slow, but each small progress was a victory. Emily was by her side every day, encouraging her to do physical therapy exercises and helping her rebuild her strength. Despite her fragility, Emily's mother showed a silent determination that inspired everyone around her. One morning, while holding her mother's hand and helping her walk down the hospital corridor, Emily felt an indescribable pride. "You're doing so well, Mom. I'm so proud of you," she said, trying to hold back tears. Her mother, with a tired smile, replied, "And I'm proud of you, my daughter. You're my rock." Despite the progress, the emotional and physical pressure began to take its toll on Emily. Her own health crises became more frequent, and Daniel was always by her side, trying to convince her to take care of herself. "Emily, you can't forget about yourself. We need you healthy," he insisted, his concern evident in his voice. One night, after a long day at the hospital, Emily collapsed in tears on her living room couch. Daniel found her there, exhausted and desolate. "I feel like I'm failing everyone," she confessed, her voice broken by tears. "I can't take care of Mom and myself at the same time." Daniel hugged her, holding her tightly. "You're not failing, Emily. You're doing the best you can. And you're not alone. We have friends, family, everyone here to help. Allow yourself to be cared for too." Emily knew he was right, but guilt and fear were difficult feelings to shake off. However, she began to accept more help, allowing close friends and family to take turns caring for her mother. It was an act of humility and courage, recognizing that she didn't need to carry the burden alone. Months passed, and Emily's mother continued to improve. There were good days and bad days, but the overall trajectory was positive. Emily, with Daniel's unwavering support, began to find a better balance between taking care of her mother and herself. One afternoon, while they were all gathered at home to celebrate Emily's mother's birthday, she looked around the room and felt a wave of gratitude. Her friends, family, Daniel, they had all been her support network. She felt blessed to have so much love and support around her. During the celebration, her mother pulled her aside to a corner of the room. "Emily, I know it hasn't been easy, but you're the strongest woman I know. And I see how much Daniel loves you. Don't let the pain and fear take that away from you." Emily, with tears in her eyes, hugged her mother. "Thank you, Mom. I promise to take care of myself too. And I'll be strong for you, for Daniel, and for myself." However, life still held more challenges. During a routine checkup, Emily received worrying news about her own health. The doctor, with a serious look, explained that constant pressure and stress had exacerbated her chronic condition, and she would need intensive treatment. The news was a devastating blow. Emily felt as if all her strength had been drained. The fear of not being able to be there for her mother and for Daniel consumed her. When she told Daniel, he held her firmly, his eyes filled with determination. "We'll overcome this together. You've already been through so much, and we'll keep fighting side by side." Emily began the treatment, facing new challenges with the courage that had become her trademark. Each session was a battle, but she was never alone. Daniel was always by her side, holding her hand, offering words of encouragement. The journey of recovery was long and arduous, but Emily found strength in the love that surrounded her. Her mother, now stronger, became a source of emotional support, repaying all the care Emily had given her. Together, mother and daughter faced adversity, rebuilding their lives with resilience and love. And amidst all the storms, Emily rediscovered a fundamental truth. Strength lies not in never falling, but in always rising up. And with Daniel by her side, she knew she could face any challenge life threw her way. The days of treatment were long and exhausting, but Emily felt a renewed strength every time she looked at Daniel by her side, always steady, always present. Her mother, now much more recovered, insisted on being there too, bringing small reminders of home and her encouraging smile. Emily's journey was tough, but the unwavering love and support around her made every step worth it. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling treatment session, Emily lay on the couch in her living room, watching the sunset through the window. Daniel sat beside her, holding her hand. "You know we're all here for you, right?" he said softly. "You're the strongest person I know, and together we'll get through this." Emily turned to him, her eyes shining with tears. "I feel like I'm always falling and getting back up, and every time I think I'm standing, something new happens and knocks me down again." Daniel hugged her tightly. "And every time you fall, you rise up stronger. That's what makes you who you are, Emily. Your resilience, your courage. And I'm here to lift you up whenever you need." Over time, Emily began to feel the positive effects of the treatment. Her days became a little brighter, and she began to rediscover small joys. The photography classes she taught continued to be a source of satisfaction and purpose. Her students, inspired by her story and the passion she put into every lesson, found in the classes a space for creativity and healing. One day, while leading an outdoor class, Emily noticed a new student, a young woman named Lily. Lily was shy and withdrawn, but there was something in her gaze that reminded Emily of herself. After class, Emily approached her. "You have a special eye for photography, Lily. I'd like to know more about you." Lily hesitated but slowly began to open up. She told Emily about the difficulties at home, about how photography was her escape, her way of finding beauty amidst chaos. Emily felt a deep connection with her. "Lily, photography has the power to turn our pain into something beautiful. And you have that ability. Keep exploring it." As Emily helped Lily develop her talent, she found a new purpose in her own healing journey. She saw in Lily a part of herself, and through this new friendship, she found a renewed strength. The local community, inspired by Emily's story, decided to organize an exhibition of her photographs and those of her students. The event was a success, bringing a sense of celebration and unity that Emily hadn't felt in a long time. During the exhibition, she found Daniel and her mother smiling at her, pride evident on their faces. On a special night, while they were all gathered on the beach, looking up at the stars, Emily was overcome by a profound sense of gratitude. "You are my strength," she said, holding the hands of Daniel and her mother. "I don't know if I could do it without you." Her mother, with tears in her eyes, replied, "You have always been our light, Emily. And seeing you rise up to every challenge gives us strength too." Daniel added with a loving smile, "Emily, you teach us every day what it means to be strong. And every time you fall, you rise up more inspiring than before." Looking up at the stars, Emily felt a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. With the healing journey still ongoing, she knew there would be ups and downs, but now she was armed with a deep conviction in her own resilience and the strength of the love surrounding her. And amidst the glow of the stars, she made a silent vow to keep fighting, not just for herself, but for everyone who loved and believed in her. After all, life was a constant rising, and each fall only made the next descent even more powerful. The weeks turned into months, and gradually, Emily felt stronger with each passing day. The treatment was working, and with every small victory, a new glimmer of hope shone in her eyes. Daniel was always by her side, and the strength of the love they shared was palpable. On a sunny morning, as they sat sipping coffee on the balcony, Daniel looked at Emily with a determined expression. "I've been thinking a lot about our future," he said. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Emily. Let's get married." Emily felt a wave of emotions. The idea of marrying Daniel, her rock, filled her heart with joy. But there was also fear. Fear that her health might fail again, fear of not being enough. "Daniel, I love you more than I can express. But what if something happens to me? What if we can't have the life we dream of?" Daniel held her hands firmly. "Nothing in life is guaranteed, Emily. But what I do know is that I love you and want to face everything by your side, through thick and thin. Let's create our own certainties together." With tears in her eyes, Emily nodded. "Yes, Daniel. I want to marry you. Let's build our future together." The wedding planning brought a new sense of purpose and happiness to both of them. The small community of the coastal village came together to help with the preparations. The wedding day was simple but filled with love and meaning. Walking down the aisle, arm in arm with her mother, Emily felt a wave of emotions. Looking at Daniel, waiting for her at the altar, she saw their future shining with promises and hope. During the vows, Daniel said, "Emily, you are my strength, my inspiration. I promise to stand by your side through every fall and every rise, loving you more each day." Emily, with tears streaming down her face, replied, "Daniel, you are my safe haven. I promise to love and support you, facing all challenges together with love and courage." Life after the wedding brought a new wave of peace and happiness. Emily and Daniel began to dream of a future filled with adventures. They talked about opening a small art gallery in the village, a place where Emily could exhibit her photographs and Daniel could hold writing workshops. However, life had more tests in store for them. During a visit to the doctor, Emily received devastating news. The treatment that seemed to be working was actually masking a more serious problem. Her condition was deteriorating, and the doctors were uncertain about the prognosis. Emily felt the ground disappear beneath her feet once again. The doctor's words echoed in her mind as she tried to process what this meant for her future. "I don't know if I have the strength to face this again," she said to Daniel, her voice filled with fear and sadness. Daniel, with tears in his eyes, held her tightly. "Emily, you are the strongest person I know. We'll face this together as we always have. No matter what happens, I'll be by your side." The following days were a mix of fear, hope, and resilience. Emily decided that regardless of what happened, she wanted to live every moment to the fullest. They began to fulfill small dreams together, like short trips to places they had always wanted to visit and stargazing nights on the beach. During one of those nights, as they looked up at the starry sky, Emily said, "Daniel, I don't know how much time we have, but I want to cherish every second. You've taught me that love is the greatest strength, and with you by my side, I feel like I can face anything." Daniel kissed her gently. "Every moment with you is a gift, Emily. Let's live intensely without regrets." And so, despite the uncertainties, Emily and Daniel lived each day with passion and gratitude. The journey was tough, but the love and strength they shared turned every challenge into an opportunity to love each other even more deeply. Emily continued to inspire those around her with her courage and resilience. The art gallery they dreamed of became a reality, a place where the community gathered to celebrate beauty and creativity. And even amidst adversity, Emily found peace and happiness, knowing that with Daniel by her side, she could face anything. The following months were a testament to the strength and love between Emily and Daniel. Each day was a gift, and they made an effort to live fully, cherishing every moment together. The art gallery they had opened in the village became a haven of beauty and inspiration for the entire community. Despite her condition, Emily passionately dedicated herself to her photography classes, while Daniel organized writing workshops that attracted people from all over. One afternoon, while Emily was at the gallery, Daniel entered with a serious yet loving look. "We need to talk," he said, holding her hands. Emily felt a tightness in her chest. "What happened?" Daniel took a deep breath. "The doctors said we need to make decisions about your treatment. They want to try a new therapy, but the risks are high." Emily looked at Daniel, feeling a mix of fear and determination. "What if we don't try?" Daniel swallowed hard. "The doctors aren't optimistic. But you've always defied the odds, Emily. You're the strongest person I know." Emily took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision ahead. "Then let's try. I won't give up without a fight." The treatment was grueling. The sessions were long and exhausting, leaving Emily weaker each day. However, Daniel's love and support never wavered. He was always by her side, holding her hand, offering words of encouragement. And even in the toughest moments, Emily found strength in the love they shared. One night, after a particularly difficult session, Emily lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. "Daniel, if something happens to me, I want you to know that these years with you have been the best of my life. You've given me more love and happiness than I could ever imagine." Daniel held her hand, tears shining in his eyes. "Emily, you're my world. I can't imagine life without you. But I promise that, no matter what happens, your love and strength will live on in me forever." Weeks passed, and slowly, Emily began to feel the positive effects of the treatment. Her strength was returning gradually, and she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could win this battle too. One morning, upon waking up, Emily felt a renewed energy. The sun was shining brightly through the curtains, filling the room with a golden light. "Today is a special day," she told Daniel with a smile. "I feel like I'm getting stronger." Daniel, with a hopeful smile, replied, "You're amazing, Emily. And today we're going to celebrate your strength and our life together." They spent the day at the beach where it all began. They walked hand in hand, laughed, and reminisced about all the tough moments they had overcome together. As the sun began to set, they sat on the sand watching the horizon. Emily rested her head on Daniel's shoulder, feeling a deep peace. "Daniel, I'm so grateful for you being by my side," she said softly. "You've made it all worth it." Daniel kissed her forehead. "And you've taught me what true love and strength are, Emily. Let's keep fighting together always." At the end of that day, as they looked up at the starry sky, Emily felt at peace. She knew there were still challenges ahead, but she also knew that with Daniel by her side, she could face anything. Each star in the sky seemed like a reminder that even in the darkness, there was light and hope. Emily's journey was marked by pain, struggle, and resilience, but also by love, joy, and triumph. And as she and Daniel embraced under the vast starry sky, they knew that no matter what the future held, their love and strength would guide them.